Hi, it's Laura, and I've been making stuff. I decided to go ahead and use the back side. I don't want to lose this piece out of there. Of this guy that we've been doing the last couple days. I haven't sewn the button on yet. I'm still undecided about that. But anyway, and when I had turned it over before, and I was kind of liking the stitching because I originally had come, well, not originally, but I had come to the decision that I was going to take separate pages and I was just going to put them back to back so that it would hide all the backside stuff. And there may be some pages that I do that with, but on this one, this is on the wool crepe. I really liked how the back looked. And so what I did is I took the same stencil that I had used on the front and I use some masking tape and mask off these two little squares so that I then use this here and, oh, that was this way, here to add, well, in a different color than I had done on this side, but it was the same image. And your brain, whether you consciously remember that or not, your brain remembers that. Can you tell I took a psychology of art class while in college? That one stuck with me really, really well. So much of that kind of stuff. Anyway, and then because of these concentric circles, I wanted some sort of center on it. So I use one of my gel pens, the Jelly Roll pen in the fluorescent pink. So I then drew kind of a center axis-ish on these concentric circles from the front side. And then just did a little target kind of point in the center. But that kind of gave this cool, brought in a different color that still relates to this side without being a literal duplication. So then I decided, because this side's kind of not got a lot going on, because this side is the side on the front side where I left that open for the where the stenciling shows. And I had somebody comment on one of my past videos that I covered up all the stenciled part on this side, and I'm like going, actually, honestly, I didn't, because this is the side I heavily, because I already had this kind of laid out, so I knew what parts were going to show. So I pretty much kept my stenciling over to that side. You may not recall this, that underneath there's not as much stenciling. So, and it's okay to cover it. So on this back side, then I decided I'd run something along this side, and that's where this all has come into play. So running a panel along one side and kind of coming up to the edge of some of these, covering over some of these lines here, because I wanted to leave a bit of a space over on this side because of how I need to attach two pages together so that they can nest to turn it into the signature in our little book. Because you recall, these are these pages up here and they nest together. So I need to have some sort of connector on this. So I wanted to leave a little gap space. And then I'm using some of, first off, I made a little tab that tucks underneath that there, and I kind of wiggled it under there. So I made a little tab for the page, taking a little scrap of canvas that I did some painting on, so kind of tied in color-wise. And I'll do some stitching on that. I'll do some more stitching on all of this part. Excuse me. Then you can go back and view one of my fabric fodder videos on creating faux resting on fabric, and that's where this piece is from. It was a white piece of fabric, and then I did some faux resting on it. I also have some pieces. This is from a strip that I did that had, and this is tea-dyed color, and then I was using a foam brush to make stripes in the fabric. So I'll try to link to those two fabric fodder videos so you can watch both of those on how to do this. So anyway, That one's the bottom one. So I want to put some of this stripe, and then I brought in a little bit of vintage text that's in, I think it's in Norwegian. So I can put these little bits under here. Oh, come on. And then, well, I don't need the piece that big. Pop this puppy under here. Like so. And then I want to do some stitching to turn this into kind of a flower. So that's why I put some of that blue on there to tie into the blue. And I'll do some stitching. But what I can do, see, is by having this piece, I can do all that stitching on, and it's not going to impact this. So I'll do the stitching on here, and then this will attach at the top and the bottom, because I do want to run a stitch all the way around to keep it from fraying further. So I'll run a stitch all the way around. That's where this will attach, and I might put a little bit of my glue stick just to hold it. As I said, because this is not something that's going to be laundered ever, I can do things like glue sticks or whatever. And I prefer I use just basic white glue or glue sticks when I'm working with fabric collages and stuff. You don't have to use fabric glue. Fabric glue, when you're gluing fabric to fabric, and many times the fabric glue is launderable, that's about the only time I would say using it. I personally don't like how stiff it gets. I just don't like how it feels. And when I first was doing fabric collages, and this is back in the late 80s and early 90s, was when I was doing them, I was using just plain Elmer's white glue. And the reason I like that is on a quilt that potentially can be laundered is it washes out. And it doesn't make the fabric super stiff. It doesn't show through it. Though it depends on the fabric. Sometimes it will show through. But I just use white glue. Just plain old white school glues oftentimes. And that's by my sewing table. I don't have any in here, but just Elmer's glue. That's all I use. And I've been using that since long before there were fabric glues out. So, and it's worked for decades. You know, we come out with all these new products. It's like, oh my God, something new, something different, and I'm like going, yeah, no, we were doing that back in the 80s and 90s, and we didn't have all these special things. And guess what? It worked then. It's not new now, so it is rather humorous from my lofty age position. God, I don't feel my age. It's like, when the hell did that happen? But looking back on stuff, and it's like, oh my God, they've come up with something new. And it's like, yeah, guess what? No, this isn't really new. So I get a kick out of that. Anyway, so I'm going to go stitch on this. I got to get set up. Let me see. I might be able to set something up, but I'm going to go stitch this. So if you see me stitching it, I figured out how to set it up. If I come back and it's all stitched, but I didn't show you how, then I didn't get it set up. But I will, I promise, soon get it set up for me to do videos at my sewing machine. All right, well, I think the setup worked. I just didn't have it pointed very well. So I'll work on that, but at least you saw a little bit of my sewing. Okay, now one of the things that I didn't do is when I did free motion, which means you take the feed dogs, because with the sewing machine, your needle's going along, but you have your presser foot, and then there's feed dogs that help move the fabric along. Well, when you drop the feed dogs down, then it's free motion and you can take your stitching wherever you want to go. And I'll do something about that here in the future if people are interested in that. But so much of the time when I'm doing that, I'm quilting, and you don't need a stabilizer. So I probably should have put a stabilizer under this. So it kind of, though it doesn't bother me, it kind of warp thing. So I gave it a steam pressing fixes a lot. So it's flat again. It's just a little wonky, but I'm not mad about that. So anyway, so I've got the panel going down the side here, all set to go. So I want to do some stitching and stuff. So I'll stitch this at the top and the bottom after I do that, because what I want to do is take this outermost ring and stitch it and bringing in some more of this turquoise. So stitch that going around that part. Part of the reason I used this scrap piece that I had of this rusting thing because I liked that I had the circles on it. So then putting this little flower type thing in there just kind of stays with that garden feel, but I'm really liking how this is coming out. So anyway, I'll go ahead and do some stitching. So it's the hand stitching like this is, and all that's going to do is continue this circle. And since I used this little cup, and these are the friction pens that are removable on paper, but they are also removable on fabric. And I'm going to show you this really quick. So I marked that on there, so it shows that circle. I can do my stitching, and then I just take it with a heat gun. Voila. Bye-bye orange mark. Because the friction pens, how it erases the ink is when you erase it with this little eraser thingy, friction, which creates heat, which makes it go away. And using either a heat gun or an iron makes it go away in the same way. So to redraw it back on there. Now, this is always a good idea before you go marking something all up. Test it on a little scrap piece to make sure that it actually does go away, because on some fabrics it will ghost. It won't go away completely, but when I came back to quilting, using these friction pens as marking pens was one of the things that didn't exist when I was quilting before. When I did my Rip Van Winkle and stepped away from quilting for 15 years, when I came back, this was the coolest thing from that entire 15 years that I liked. So anyway, so that gives me a line to follow. And then once it's stitched, I just hit the heat gun on it and it makes the whole line go away. And so I'll photograph and put it up on my Instagram once I get that all stitched. But that gives you an idea of what this page is going to look like, the front. And I'll decide what I'm doing on that center. And then it'll flip. And this will be the back side. And I'm going to do something along here. I don't know if I want to have it on this side attached on, or if I want to attach it on this side along the seam. Oh, I'll probably do it on the front side, is I'll just stitch that on, because the next page then will stitch on kind of next to it. And that gives me, so that this will end up being folded over. So it'll just be a skinny little strip on there, but I think I like it on this side more than on this side. It'll still show on this side, except if I have my other page and it butts up pretty close to that. This needs to be pressed. So you won't see much of it. All right, let's do it with this same fabric. Anyway, so I'll have a little bit of gappy-OC in there, and that's the part that will stitch that down so it's into the signature. Anyway, but yeah, this is like 1/2 inch. This is just off the selvage. I may end up using something different, but anyway, so the back side, which I didn't think was going to be the back side of the page. I thought the back side of the page was going to be a whole new page attached. And this turned out, I liked it better. And I'm really pleased with how it came out. So anyway, don't forget, make stuff. Thanks a bunch.